Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Lewis, your 2020 NMA Chairman of the Board from Lockheed Martin Leadership Association in Marietta, Georgia. First, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your schedule to join us for our second day of the 2020 NMA Virtual Chapter Leadership Training. I know several of you are working from home. I'm one of the lucky ones. Well, depends on how you look at it. I'm still working at the Lockheed Martin Aero facilities in Marietta, Georgia. As electrical development engineer, I work in engineering to help develop working instruction for the electrical mechanics to wire up consoles, equipment, and even the C-130 and F-35 aircrafts. I have been working with Lockheed for over 36 years. I started my career in the Navy as an electronic technician, specializing in communication and radar equipment. I want to give a special thanks to my chapter for supporting me throughout my LMLA and NMA career. I would not be here without their continuous support. I've been a member of the Lockheed Martin Leadership Association for over 20 years. In 2002, I was nominated and selected as the NMA National Member of the Year. In 2012, I served LMLA as the chapter president. I started my career at the NMA Board of Directors in 2014 and held several positions. The Southeast Area Chair, Community and Communication Chair, and in 2017, I started my journey up to chairs from Secretary to Treasurer to Vice Chair, after which I was elected to serve as the 2020 Chairman of the Board. What an awesome and blessed career. Before we continue, I would like to say a few words about the challenging times we are going through, the coronavirus pandemic. We are all experiencing a situation for which we have never expected, nor for which we have planned. First thing, we need to take care of ourselves and follow the proposed guidelines. Some of our team members may be working from home, while others are still working on site. During these difficult times, we need to think out of the box and be creative. What can you do to continue to grow, keep your chapter engaged, and to be ready to start as soon as we have the go-ahead? Please go to our Facebook page, NMA The Leader, and share what you have been doing to help your chapter or your council remain engaged during these difficult times. Be strong and know we all get through this together. Hashtag we all in this together. Hashtag NMA Strong. Now I'd like to officially welcome all of you to the second day of the Virtual CLT. We plan to provide you with the chapter leadership training you need to make your chapter successful throughout this year, throughout next year, and beyond. We are also happy that you are taking the time to join us, and trust it will be a learning experience for everyone. I want to ask everyone who is in attendance if you would please email your name and chapter number to robin@nma1.org. That is Robin, ROBIN, at nma1.org, O-R-G. We want us to send a certificate of attendance to everyone who participates in this CLT. If you have a group with you, just send a list of all the peoples in your group, and we'll need an email address to where to send them. Thank you. Before we call on our first presenter, I want to start this CLT by introducing our 2020 National Officer who comprises of the NMA Executive Committee. If you are in attendance and have a video camera on your computer, I would like for you to make yourself visible until I introduce all of you. First, we have Scott Chestnut, our 2020 NMA Chair, Vice Chair, who is with College Leadership Association in Richardson, Texas.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. Next is Barbara Deatherage, our 2020 National Treasurer. Barbara is from the Energy Northwest chapter in Richland, Washington. Then serving as our 2020 NMA National Secretary is Matt Zellman from the BCBSM, that is the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Leadership Development Association in Detroit, Michigan.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning. Our last member of our 2020 Executive Committee is Shelley Minke, our 2019 Chairman of the Board. She is assigned the Director for the Lockheed Martin Leadership Association in Palmdale, California. Shelley, thank you for all what you do to help make this association successful each and every day. We all appreciate it. Now I want to introduce our 6 presenters for today. First, Steve Bailey, our NMA Executive Director, will be presenting Session 1, Ingredients of a Successful NMA Chapter in Good Times and Difficult Times. Next, Session 2, Recognition and Awards, will be presented by Scott Chestnut, our 2020 NMA National Vice Chair, who is from Richardson, Texas. Next, Session 3, Secretary and Treasurer, will be presented by Glenn Button, who is our NMA 2020 Recognition Chair from Cypress, California. And our last presenter is Darryl Wacker, our NMA newest staff member, our website and meeting planning manager from Dayton, Ohio, will present Session 4, Communication and Public Relations. On behalf of the NMA members nationwide, I would like to thank all of you for your contributions to the 2020 Virtual CLT. Now it's time to start our first session, Ingredients of a Successful NMA Chapter in Good Times and Difficult Times. This keynote session will be conducted by none other than Steve Bailey, our CM, our NMA Executive Director and a native of Parkersburg, West Virginia. Steve.
You can talk.
Good morning, everybody. Darryl's getting the presentation pulled up, and then he and I will switch seats, and we'll get things kicked off here.
I was having trouble with the clicker, so you'll have to use the mouse. There you go, Steve.
All right.
Just use the mouse down. Just right-click into the pan.
Okay. Can they see me?
No.
No. All right. Good morning. Thank you, Darryl. We certainly are giving Darryl his baptism by fire this week. Been with us 3 weeks, and all of a sudden he's running a CLT with us. So, and he's surviving. That's the best part. So I want to welcome everybody to today's session. Hopefully there's no one on here yet who was here yesterday. I told him, I said, you're really a glutton for punishment if you do that. So we probably have a lot of people that will be joining us for Scott's presentation afterwards. But so let's get going here. Okay, come on. No, we've got some issues. Here's the clicker. We're just
You're right here. Just
I gotta go down there. All right. All right. Well, obviously that's me.
our clicker is not working today. So.
Yeah, our clicker died. That's just wonderful. Darryl, we still got issues. Would you mind hanging around?
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to advance the slide. Where did that?
Just click it anywhere down here.
Okay. I'm not really that incompetent. It just looks that way. And now I got to go backwards.
Here.
Yeah, I'd rather use the keyboard.
Okay, up and down arrows.
All right, I got that. All right. Finally. Gee, yesterday morning was flawless, but I guess we can't expect that 2 mornings in a row. So let me begin by just saying thank you to everybody online. We would not exist if it weren't for you and your colleagues running your chapters, taking your personal time. Nobody does NMA for a salary. All of you have jobs. You have plenty to do. Like this morning, you're giving up a Saturday morning to learn and to share and to do best practices. And I've used the analogy for today of spring training for managers. Of course, spring training for baseball players is a little bit askew this year, thanks to the pandemic. But that's okay. It's the way it works. But, you know, baseball players, football players, it doesn't make any difference. All these people that make, you know, huge salaries, they all come together because they have to practice the fundamentals. Even the most successful players go to some kind of spring practice, or the football players later on, because they need to get to know each other. There are always new players on the team, just like your chapter. Many of you are about to hold elections, and you got to be bringing on new people. Many of you on the phone may have just been elected or appointed. So it's important that you come together and learn, and we appreciate that. And actually now more than ever, you know, because like this little guy down in the corner, we don't know what all's coming around the corner. We got caught off guard. Many of us were sent home almost without warning. And so here we are dealing with stuff. Well, guess what? It's going to be the same way when we get back to chapter land. So with that in mind, we have learning objectives for today. There are 3 of them. One is being able to recognize the characteristics of a value-added chapter. First and foremost, that's what I want to convey. And of course, those of you that know me well know I'm just a country boy from West Virginia. And I like to use analogies. I'm a visual learner as well as auditory. I combine both in order for something to sink in. So I use a lot of pictures. Hopefully you'll get a grin out of some of them, because that's the way I like to learn. So that's what this whole ingredients thing is all about. The other learning objective is to walk away from today, hopefully being able to spot behaviors or missed opportunities that undermine success. And this includes the after effects of COVID-19, because we really don't know what those are yet. And lastly, presidents, vice presidents, it doesn't make any difference what you do. All of you need to go back to the chapter with impact. So hence, let's talk about ingredients. But you know, building and maintaining a successful chapter is an ongoing process. But guess what? There really are no secret ingredients, nor are there really hard to find ingredients. I don't know how many times I've had a recipe, something sounded intriguing, and of course a call for something I didn't have. I go to the grocery store and I can't find it to save my soul. It's really annoying. A successful chapter is easy enough to do. And you are the top chefs. You want the freshest ideas, the most interesting choices of things to do, and a full complement of chapter programming to whet the appetite of your members. So, guess who's coming to dinner? You got 4 groups of people around your NMA table. First of all is executive management. You don't exist without their support. HR and training. It's imperative that every NMA chapter be in touch with human resources, be in touch with the training department. If they're one and the same, fine. If they're different entities, good. You certainly want to have a lovely dinner prepared for your existing members, but you also want to always recall those who haven't joined yet, the potentials. If they look in the dining room, what do they see? If they walk by the kitchen of the chapter, what do they smell? We're going to talk a little bit later about branding. So you have to know who's coming to dinner and know what they like to eat. In other words, what turns people on in your chapter. What might they like to try? And what are they allergic to? All right. So first thing you got to do is decide what you're fixing. So grab the recipe book. First thing in your recipe book should be your chapter vision or mission statement. A really good exercise for you when you get back the next time you have an officer meeting, ask everybody to write down the mission statement or vision statement if that's what you're operating from. My guess is everybody will look at each other and giggle and go, oh, I guess I don't have that memorized. That's okay, because it's a really healthy exercise to take a look at it and study it and see if anything needs to be It's just a matter of understanding what's going on. All right, eat healthy. What I mean by that is you've got a chapter vision and mission statement, so find the company goals and objectives. Link the two together. One of the things that drives me crazy is if a chapter says, well, here's our mission statement, then the company objectives, because they're posted, your CEO, somebody has said, here's what we want to do in 2020. You have got to marry the two, because you are there to support the company, or in a community chapter, respective companies, or in our government chapters, the government entity. So that's what you're there to do. Then use some fresh ingredients. Look for new recipes. Quit fixing the same old thing. A lot of times when chapters see decreasing attendance, it's because they are not doing anything exciting. So take stock of your brand. You're going, what do you mean? You have a reputation as a chapter. Everybody looks at the chapter and has something in their head about what the chapter is all about. It's your brand. And guess what? People eat with their eyes first. So it's how do people see your chapter? Details, because the little things matter. Any of you that have ever hosted people in your home know that attention to detail can make all the difference between a nice affair and a really lovely function. Stretch the limits a bit. Do something different. Get your new members engaged early. Always have a backup plan. And never forget that you're the host and you need to make this seamless and every event upbeat and positive. And we're going to talk more about all these little points on the screen as we go through. All right, so what do you do next? You assess your cooking tools. Executive management support. What condition is that in? You'll hear today from other presenters about the importance of keeping in touch with them. In our companies today, with mergers and acquisitions and people in developmental programs, people upstairs in Mahogany Row move around a lot. And chances are you've got some new people up there, and they may not have legacy understanding of your chapter. Well, then you've got to go ask for that support. It is never automatic. Make sure that you are transitioning. When you elect new officers, that you don't, a lot of people will call in here for advice, and I'm glad they do. That's why we're here. But they'll say, well, I was kind of left in the lurch. Nobody handed me anything. The last person took early retirement or left the organization, and I don't know what I'm doing. Well, we can usually help. But you take care of that on your end if you can. Make sure you plan out a full year. Don't run your chapter month by month. Same goes with professional development. Deborah Davis liked yesterday, spent a lot of time talking about the importance of laying out a plan, because if you're a member of an NMA chapter, it means you have decided to own part of your own development, which is why you belong to NMA, belong to your chapter. So you owe it to your members to lay out the next 12 months, what they see happening. Same with community service. My guess is after this coronavirus thing, there's a lot of new ideas, and we'll see some later on when I talk about what some of the chapters are telling us they're doing. Make sure that everything you do is budgeted, so there are no surprises, and always include a membership growth plan. What is it you're going to do to add new members? All right, so what cookbooks do I use? After I put this slide together, I kind of sat back and laughed, and I went, okay, I like to cook. So I have a lot of cookbooks. I even have some from my grandmother's, the old little church cookbooks in the, in the 20s. And they're really fascinating, but that's a webinar for another day. But if you're like me, even though you have a lot of cookbooks, the minute I start to make something I haven't made in a while, I Google it. So my cookbooks are really envious of that. They're not real happy. But I think we probably all do that. But my point is, it's okay to cook from scratch, but only if you've had lots of practice and experience. If you're fairly new to what's going on in the chapter, it's best to find some tried and true recipes. The NMA guidebooks will serve that function, as well as, hopefully today, you'll get some best practices from other people. But everybody needs a guide. And here's the best one, the CAR1. The Chapter Achievement Roadmap. We used to call it the Chapter Achievement, Chapter Activity Report, CAR, and then our board got creative and decided it needed a new name. So we became the Chapter Achievement Roadmap. But that's really good because I always said it's a roadmap. If you are not familiar with the CAR1, I don't care where you sit in the chapter, that is what your chapter sends in every month in order to hopefully win the NMA Excellent, Superior, or Outstanding Award at the end of the year. And of course, with everything that's gone on with this COVID-19, we're going to be mindful of that when we do your reports, when we do calculations at the end of the year. Don't worry about that. What I do want you to focus on are the activities, like the one on the screen, administration. You get credit for sending us your org chart, proving officer transition. Even with my glasses on, I'm having trouble. Your budget, all kinds of committee meetings. These are all the things that you should be doing as a chapter. And if I were a new chapter president, I would gather my team and I would go down this item by item, make sure it's covered, make sure you're doing it. There's nothing else better in NMA to guide you your coming year. So, okay, now we need to start to get serious about things. Recipe ingredients, like I said, without executive input and support, your cake isn't gonna rise. And you can't use self-rising flour. You gotta go for the big stuff and keep it on the shelf. And what I mean by that is you have to constantly stay in touch with executive management because they have the old WIFM, what's in it for me? What's in it for them to support you? What's in it for them to attend your meetings? What's in it for them to be a speaker at top management night? You've got to show them, especially new people, why they need to be engaged. Same thing with HR and training. I call them the essential oils. Somebody gave me an awful piece of advice back in 1860 something, right after the Civil War, when I started with NMA. Someone said, because I was Northeast Regional Manager, and I was in charge of all the chapters from West Virginia to Maine. And someone said, stay away from the training department. Well, I was 28 years old. What did I know? At least I had brains enough to ask why. And the person said, because they will feel you are a threat. Well, that was the most awful piece of advice I've ever been given in my 400-year career with NMA. You need to partner with HR. Why? Because I don't know. By virtue of what I do here, I've interacted with a lot of senior VPs of HR. And I've never had anyone say, geez, guess what? I have more money, more time, more people. I have more than I need to do my job. No. It's one of the first places a budget act falls. So the chapter needs to be an extension of what's going on. You need to have somebody from training and development on your executive leadership team. You need to work together because the goal is the same, helping people improve personally and professionally. So make sure you have an org chart. You do that officer training and mentoring. Publish your chapter goals and objectives. They're a good marketing tool. And people need to know, what is it the chapter is all about? Publish your budget. Adjust it if you need to, but put it out there. You are collecting member dues. People are giving you their money. They have a right to know what you're doing with it. Renew, send, I guess that's on there. I want people to renew your members. Robin corresponds with every chapter secretary treasurer every month, sending out membership forms, collecting dues and saying, hey, who's been added, who's been subtracted. So you want to do that every single month. And when you have election results, send them in. We get a lot of calls from people go, I'm not getting emails from NMA, and I'll look and go, well, it's because nobody told us you were the new chapter professional development chairman. So I'm pretty in touch with people, but we can't know it all. So, you have to make sure that somebody there is assigned to make that happen. From professional development, NMA, we grant continuing education units for your programs. But you do have to once a year, it's just a national requirement, once a year send in that B3 form that says, yes, I'm chapter XYZ, and this is what we think we're going to do. You don't have to lay it all out, but basically be put on notice that you have a plan of action for professional development for your members. Vary it. Get executive management involved in it. Yesterday, one of the chapters was talking about their book club, and someone said, well, how do you choose what books? And said, we asked the execs to tell us what books. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I thought, well, that's really cool. No wonder they're willing to help facilitate some of those book club sessions. Sometimes if you're doing a course, I've seen many, somebody in senior management who go, well, I'll facilitate session 2. That's really up my alley. But you got to ask. All right, also make sure you've got a certified supervisor program, that's new, and a certified manager program. We'll help you with that. We'll put you in touch with people at the Institute of Certified Professional Managers. That's what we're here for. We have a new facility skills course, building virtual teams. Anybody that took that course before now, hopefully found it helpful as you're getting through this period. So, and you'll notice on there the largest amount of ingredients is 2 cups of linking with HR. I cannot stress that enough. All right, in terms of communications, how are your chapter newsletters going? Are they electronic? Are they paper? What are you utilizing to stay in touch with your members? People are busy. Yeah, they don't necessarily want something else to read, so you make it short and you make it sweet, but you keep the connection up. Remind people of upcoming professional development programs. Keep your website updated, for heaven's sakes. If you're attracting a new member and you say, well, yeah, we got a website, and they go on there and they find out the last thing that was posted was February of 2017, well, that doesn't make you look very sharp. So either close it down or fix it. Let people know how to get in touch with us. There is a national organization to which they belong above and beyond the chapter, so publish that. And speaking of publishing, one of Daryl's new tasks as a new employee, he wants to put out an issue of Break Time in May. And we'd like to have articles from you. What are you doing? Maybe let us know what you've done during the coronavirus to keep in touch with your members. And then you got your own Facebook page, blog, Twitter, whatever it is, social media is here to stay. From, I call the Association Development Cooler, have a plan of action for growing your members. We talked about this yesterday, and someone said, well, we asked people to join our management group. And I'm like, no, wrong words. We are officially the National Management Association. That is our legal name. But in about 2005, 2006, some of your company executives pulled me aside and said, your name is hurting you. We are all doing leadership development as well as membership development. And then I began to do a little homework, and I found out in a lot of our chapters, one of the reasons people don't join is they think it's for management only. They may be individual contributors, they may be working from home, they may have a job title that doesn't have manager in it, maybe they're aspiring to management, so they think they can't join. So that's one of 2 reasons people don't join. They think it's not for them because they don't qualify. And the other reason, and I'll give Wendell Pashon our former chairman of the board and current association development co-chair, Wendell has done considerable research on why people don't join chapters. And the number one reason he always hears, well, no one asked me. Yeah, you publish it. There are signs out there. You have a campaign, but nothing beats individually asking someone, how come you've never joined our leadership association? You want to go to the next meeting with me? It's that personal touch. Have marketing materials. If you don't have any, give us a call. We've got some samples we'll send to you. Send qualified lead referrals to us. One of my successor, when Brian Burke comes on board, he's going to be focused like a laser on adding new chapters. Well, you don't do that by going down the highway and going, well, there's a big building. I think we should have a chapter there. No, doesn't work. You got to know what's in that big building. What kind of climate is there? Is there a qualified lead? Does your next door neighbor, does your brother-in-law, does somebody that sits in the pew in front of you in church, where do they work that could possibly host an NMA leadership organization? All of you have connections. If 10 of you in the coming year set a qualified lead to NMA that we develop into a chapter, it would be huge. And that reminds me, we actually have a program. It's called the Chapter Growth Incentive Program. So especially if you're a small chapter and you're out there and you go, geez, our community hospital could have an NMA chapter. If you'll help us get something going, we'll give you $25 for each new member of each new chapter. We'll take it right out of their dues and we'll send it back to you. So keep that in mind. Right? Make sure you do get local press coverage. Daryl can help you with that. That's one of his specialties. One of the reasons we hired him is because of his background in newspaper development. Are you planning to present a Silver Night or a leadership award? Yeah, usually those are done during the first week in June, just out of habit, because it's Management Week in America. But who knows what the first week in June is going to be like. So maybe do it the first week in July. The point is there's someone in your organization who should be recognized for the leadership that they provide. And I would also say, go out into the community. Our NMA awards are not just for people in your organization. There have to be heroes, people in your local organization, in your local community, who have done something extraordinary during this crisis. You need to recognize them, and NMA is the perfect opportunity to do it. You'll get a lot of people at that meeting, and the outreach to the community will be huge. All right, Chapter Member of the Year Award. I hope every one of you has a Chapter Member of the Year. Somebody in your organization needs to be honored for what they've done. And then you do what? You submit it for the National Member of the Year. Every Member of the Year that we've had, at least in recent years, has also been their Chapter Member of the Year. Other thing we'll be doing at the annual conference, the Executive of the Year, the Hall of Fame, in addition to the Member of the Year. We have to nominate people. We just pick them out of thin air. The normal due date for those is June 1. We've moved it to June 15th. The next time you get together as a leadership team, I want you to think, do we have an executive here whom we should nominate for NMA's Executive of the Year? They do not have to come from huge organizations. It's about their impact and how they have changed your organization. And yeah, how they've been engaged with your NMA chapter as well. And certainly, every chapter will tell us their best program of the year is Executive Management Night, Top Management Night, whatever. Perfect opportunity to get your executives engaged. In terms of community service, and we'll move through these rather quickly, we hope you're doing a leadership speech contest. One of the sessions yesterday addressed that. We've got guides, Robin and Sue and I, of course, but we can help you if you want to get a chapter speech contest started. I want to congratulate the North Texas Council, because the 3 chapters that comprise it got together last week, a week before last, and held their speech contest virtually under the guidance of Wendell Pashon, He's putting together, he's tracking everything they did. So he's going to put together a guidebook for how do you do a speech contest virtually? One of the questions that came in the chat room yesterday, and I can't see the chat room from where I am, but I will for the rest of the day for the other presenters. But one of the chat room questions was, well, what's going to happen at the national level? Well, who knows? But we are moving forward. We are planning the annual conference in Greenville, South Carolina in October. We are planning to hold the speech contest finals. But thanks to what the North Texas Council did, and Sue and Daryl worked, and I was just there for pictures, but Sue and Daryl worked very closely with Wendell to pull that off. So we know we have great lessons learned already. If we will hold a national speech contest. There will be finals. They will the kids will either show up or we will do it virtually. You can count on it. So youth programs, community events, they all matter. And they all showcase your company out in the community. So mix all these ingredients together. And you still got to add a couple things. Make sure you're orienting your new members. Make sure you invite your national director or associate director to your programs. Send them your chapter minutes, meeting minutes, your executive committee minutes. The directors are here to help us know what's going on in your chapter. Well, you got to let them know. So make sure you get your membership roster updates to Robin. Continue supporting a national director or an associate. We've got information. It doesn't cost anything to have an associate director. And if you want someone on the national board of directors, they attend 2 meetings a year. 3 actually, but one's at the annual conference. The other is January and June or July. A little trip to Dayton, Ohio. And lastly, purely social gatherings. They are important. Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan nailed this one several years ago. They started having the name, I didn't write it down, so it left my brain. But they do something on Thursday nights once a month, hosted by different department heads, where they just get together after work, let the traffic die down a little bit. They find some place close to work, and people go in and just enjoy one another's company for a while. Somebody, but you need to mute yourself. But it's just a great way to establish camaraderie among people. All right, do your member surveys, get feedback. What's working? Meet with your advisors regularly. Make sure that you as an officer or a leader, committee head, are familiar with NMA's website. We put things on there for you. And we're trying to, and certainly Sue's done a great job in the recent weeks before Daryl started cleaning up some things that need to be fixed. And Daryl's getting ready to dive into it with both feet. This is your website. If there's something you need or want, let us know. And then certainly make sure you are recognizing everybody in your chapter that's contributing. Now, what's going on here? Very simply, people look like they're having a good time. They're having fun. They're getting to know one another after a hard day's work. This is what employee engagement, employee engagement is such a huge deal. Well, employee engagement begins with people knowing each other. That's the basis of trust. So your chapter just cannot be a function where people come in and sit down at, now social distancing at tables. You've got to provide that interaction. That's what NMA is all about. So you need to ask yourself, is this a cool place? Is it the place to be? Who belongs to your chapter? Are the movers and shakers in the company there? If they're not, why not? If you're surrounded by ERGs, those famous employee resource groups, set yourselves apart. I have a lot of people, well, we can't do anything because there's employee resource groups. Well, what was the word we used earlier? Ingenuity. Partner with them. Find out ways to do things together. Hold your own. You have a right to be there. A leadership development organization in today's world adds value. So what you need to do is make sure that your chapter is perceived appropriately. So now you're ready to cook according to directions and await your masterpiece. Nurturing a chapter is an ongoing process. So you have two tasks. Prepare your officers to do their jobs well and to create a chapter atmosphere that makes people want to belong. But what happens when things go awry? This is where your leadership chops are tested. This is such a good opportunity to showcase your ability to assess the situation and develop a recovery plan. I know I stopped at the post office on the way here this morning, because we've had our mail stopped, and we won't be going back to work here in Dayton until Monday, May 4th. But Sue texted me early and said, would you go get the mail on the way? I need to see if we got any money. And so guess I'm going to do a little commercial here. We did, but we're like everybody else. We've not sold any awards. We've not sold any merchandise. We've not sold any courses. So, we're like every other organization. We don't have any non-dues income coming in because our chapters have been out, been on the lam for 40, 45 days. So, and we know some chapters, we've had a couple people tell us, we had to leave so quickly. I forgot to grab the chapter checkbook before I left. We can't pay our dues till we're back in the door. We get that, just let us know. Otherwise, April 30th is this week. If you have the ability to get your chapter dues in and write a check on Monday, it would be helpful to us as we're trying to hold it together just like everybody else. So leading a chapter in challenging times, guess what? You can do it. You know your chapter, you know your members. I hope you're in touch with senior leadership. Then you just got to go for it. No guts, no glory. What are we going to do? And this is, Michelle asked me to spend some time talking about leading a chapter in difficult times and provide some hints for working from home, which you probably don't need by now because you guys have figured it out, but we'll kind of fly through those. And make sure that you're making it home work for you. I chatted with a fraternity brother of mine last night who works for Canadian Pacific Railway, and he lives in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And he said, I am not a virtual meeting guy. And I was dreading it. And he said, you know what? I've really been productive. I said, Andrew, same here. Enjoyed this much more than I thought. And we all approach it differently, and everybody's affected by it differently. These two ladies are taking completely different views of things, which we get. So, some 4 little tips for working from home. Create work triggers. The daily routine of getting ready and commuting to work helps get your brain ready. But when you're at home, you got to do things differently. I will fess up. First, we decided early on we were going to have a Zoom meeting every day among Sue, Rob, and Daryl that night. I mean, Daryl started April 1, and we got him engaged actually a couple of days before that. So the first morning, I grabbed a baseball cap, put it on my head, and off we went. And we had our meeting. Morning 2, I went, wait a minute. I'm an early riser. I didn't have to wear the baseball cap on Monday. I had plenty of time. So Tuesday morning, I got a shower, I shaved, I cleaned up, put on clean clothes, and went downstairs to my designated workspace and logged on, and things went so much better. It does matter how you deal with this thing. Stay motivated with the list. There's some things on here that I picked up from an article that I found a long time ago, actually, about why people get screwed up with lists. But a simple to-do list can work wonders. Write it out. And it also means I'm bad about that. I will keep things in my head rather than write them down. And then suddenly my brain's about ready to explode because there's not a lot of room up there anyway. And once I get it out of here and down on paper, it is such a relief and so much easier to work that way. Schedule yourself. Take into account other commitments, but let other people know when you're free. Let your colleagues know when it's a good time to meet and when you've blocked out personal times. And set boundaries if you're working from home. Your family, your friends, neighbors need to know that you're working remotely. It doesn't mean you're free all the darn time. And then create a process for collaboration. When I went looking for pictures, there's probably some of this going on, the two guys in the middle. My favorite's the guy on the right. because he's like, hey guys, what's going on? And that's kind of how we've done it. I love our Monday morning, or our every morning, staff phone calls. You know, we have a few laughs and a few giggles about whatever's going on, and then we get serious. And we're actually, I mean, for a small staff, we work together amazingly well. God knows we've done it for enough years, but it's even gone better working virtually because everybody lays out their day and who needs to do what to contribute to it. So trust me, we're good. All right, so back to Michelle's other question. Steve, will you share with people how to be an effective leader in difficult times? I'm like, okay. You can't be completely fearless. All of us are kind of shooting in the dark here. Not everybody's sure when we're going to get back. I know I've had some chapter leaders going, I hope people don't forget about us. And, you know, are people going to have time? Are they going to want to get together? You know, do you have physical distancing and social distancing issues when you get back? I don't know. Chances are you do. But guess what? You can get through it. And you have to have faith and confidence that your leadership team can fix anything. I know here over the years, you know, we've had to cancel, I think, 3 conferences because of hurricanes. And other things, 9/11, we had a national conference scheduled 2 weeks after 9/11. We all just hunkered down, you know, joined hands, sang Kumbaya for a minute, and then went, we can do this. So can you guys. Love and respect your mission. Your NMA chapter, I said earlier, you know, you got ERGs and all those other competing interests. Well, you have a mission and a vision, and you stand for something. So be proud of it, and always do what's best for the chapter and your members. It's really easy as a leader sometimes to want to do your own thing and what you think is best, and that you may not know what's best. So you got to be a good scout. You got to be prepared. You know, react quickly. You and your leadership team should be talking and communicated and Zooming this coming week, because I know a lot of us will be back to work in May. So lay some groundwork. Don't wait to get back, but have a contingency plan. And then my favorite is have a little attitude. We'll talk about that in a second. You got to keep learning. And you have to learn how have people been affected by the virus? You know, everybody has telling tension. And when you get back and you have your next chapter meeting, everybody's going to want to talk about what I did during the COVID-19. But how has it changed you? How will you be working differently when you get back to work? I don't think it's any secret in corporate America. This whole business and this whole experience of everybody working from home will permanently impact what comes next. I don't know what comes next, but none of us do. But study yourselves, see what you can learn from others. And as Patty LaBelle says, I got a new attitude. And that's what you got to have. Because your chapter needs to be singing a song, and people will want to get together. And I realize that will have some parameters when you get back. But trust me, if you as chapter leaders are passionate, it'll show. And lastly, this is just my tip. Keep perspective and keep your sense of humor. I'm lucky that I was raised by a mother who could see the funny side of nearly anything. And I think I got that from her. My dad was a little more stoic. And it always has served me well, because stuff happens. And you can either let it get you down, or you can just kind of like scream and maybe pound the table. And then you go, all right, what the heck? We're going to get through this. So it does matter. So Michelle asked us, we did a survey, and many of you in the audience got it. And we said, what are you doing during COVID-19? How are you getting through this? And I want to share some of the results. Marietta, Georgia, Lockheed Martin, Jay Patel wrote in, and he goes, we've established a bi-weekly meeting with them, and we held a virtual offsite on April 10th. We have high school students. They have a big scholarship program there. A lot of the Lockheed Martin chapters do. And so they're letting the students apply virtually. So they're doing PD things virtually. They're looking ahead, brainstorming ideas for PMP and CM certifications. How might they do that virtually? I love this one in terms of a food bank. We're collecting items virtually. and through online store orders. So, and they're also trying to bolster some of their other social media presences. So, spirits are high. Brian reports from Boeing Fort Walton Beach. So people actually seem to be enjoying working from home. We sent links to the 2 NMA online webinars to our members. I'm going to send a leadership article to all members every week. Our board has been communicating by email, instant messaging. Geez, they've been using an occasional phone call. Next, we're going to be doing a WebEx style meeting. And of course, they always let us know. Thank you, Brian. They'd be on the phone yesterday and today. This one comes from Marcello down at Nokia. They don't so much, it took 2 pages. They're doing leadership team meetings via WebEx. The general membership meetings, they have prep meetings ahead of time. I love prep meetings. I call it the meeting before the meeting, to get rid of the potential for as many surprises as possible. They actually held one of their big meetings virtually. Did it for 90 minutes, had an open video for the chapter president and their speakers. They sent out reminders because people were working from home. And one of my favorites, they're like, doesn't mean we can't stop trying to do get new members. So they made sure to invite non-Nokia Leadership Association employees to join them. They're participating, and they've done this now for a long time, participating in our NMA Live Online webinars. The May one is already on the website. You can check it out. And I'll be sending out a formal constant contact announcement probably May 4th. I may get it out this week. They're holding virtual classes. Their book club has been doing virtual WebEx meetings. They're keeping dues payments current. Thank you, Marcello. Keep those dues coming in. And across the board, you can see they're using all kinds of social media. Leah from Lockheed Martin Space in Denver sent out, and thanks to Elizabeth Thomas in Florida, she forwarded it to me, said, look what our Colorado folks are doing. And they sent an email, which, like I said, she forwarded, trying to provide resources, just as a chapter to their members who suddenly had to work from home. Skill building, they broke them into 4 groups: skill building, exercise, meditation and self-care, and miscellaneous. And I thought this was pretty cool. They set up a forum on SharePoint so people could share what they're doing during the crisis. And then down in Melbourne, Florida, one of our 2 Collins Leadership Association chapters, Shelby says, we're doing as best we can. And we are using virtual tools. We're also partnering with the company to help spread the word as to what are the guidelines, what do we need to do to keep people safe. And she goes, personally, I've been using Google Hangouts and instant messaging. And then this was fun. She goes, hey, the glass is half full. I will admit that working from home has allowed me to catch up on a few things. And my guess is she's not the only one. So I want to thank you for joining us this morning. We want you to stay home, stay healthy. And it's really, the weather's getting nice. It's tempting to be out. It's like, you know, it seems like these guidelines are working. You know, that famous curve is coming down. So we want you to adhere, stay healthy, stay connected with one another. I've never washed my hands so much in my life. And lastly, we'll see you in Greenville for our annual conference. If you have never been to Greenville, South Carolina, it is a hidden gem. That little area is downtown. A river runs through it, literally. They kind of have a little mini San Antonio thing going on. It's so strollable. I know that's not a word, but it is now. You can just stroll up and down in the evenings. The Hyatt Regency's at the top of the street. It's beautiful hotels, you can tell. And you can just walk down the street there. You know, most nights we have functions, but when we don't, there's all kinds of restaurants and bars and little shops and fun things to do. And it's just a great place. And we're just excited that we were able to schedule a conference there. So I am done. If anybody has a question for me, we'll ask you to unmute yourself. And then when we're done with that, I'll introduce our next speaker. So does anybody have anything for me? Did I put everyone to sleep?
You did a great job,
Oh,
Steve.
thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, it was really good. I like it. I
Yeah,
heard yesterday and,
yeah, I
and
figured
today.
out this is one thing I'm going to miss. I love doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, Steve,
All right.
Peter, great insight, great presentation. It's a great way to kind of give everybody the opportunity to kind of reset and think about how they can move forward, especially with the current environment that we're in. So I thought it was a great presentation.
Well, thanks, Peter. It's always nice to hear from you. And if anybody ever needs a mentor for how to do community service, Peter Burns is your man. He is out there, so active in the community, takes Nokia's name out, takes his name out, and his youth and community service activities are second to none. So thank you. Anybody else? All right, then I'm looking at the clock. It looks like Scott starts at 12. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Daryl come in and get the slides up and running. And then I'll come back and introduce Scott. So let's do this. Oops. Wasn't bad.
Yeah, Daryl, if you
Hey,
could.
Scott, I believe you're sharing your own slides, right?
I am. So if you could unshare, there you go.
There you go.
I'll bring up mine. Thank you.
We'll give everybody a couple minutes here, and then Steve will introduce you, Scott.
Sounds good. And I trust you see slides.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm off.
I always like to give people a few minutes for a bio break or a coffee break, one of the two. And of course, the two are kind of.
That includes me. I'm gonna get some coffee and
related.
come back and introduce you.
There you go. For those that are hanging out, I'll share something with you that from my past on timing for starting events. In the Air Force, which is my previous career, when we get together for pre-flight briefings of large formations of aircraft, there was what was called a seats time. And the seats time was always 5 minutes before the meeting started. And everybody was expected to be in seats, 5 minutes prior. The reason we did that is because when the meeting kicked off at the top of the hour, it was kicked off by the lead navigator who did a time hack. That was back when we had watches that you actually had to set and calibrate. So the lead navigator would do a countdown to the top of the hour, and everybody would hack their watches together so that we were completely synchronized. But you do that enough over time, and it kind of gets into your blood. And I find it on my company WebExes and Zoom meetings now, I just have this instinctive urge to be in my seat 5 minutes prior to each meeting. And I know that all of you probably know people that are not that way.
Well, I have to tell you, Scott, I am the same way, but that's because I don't trust technology on my home system.
Well, and that's another good reason. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right. I'm back at my seat, and let's get moving because we have a great presenter coming up next. And Scott is our 2020 NMA Vice Chairman, which means if he keeps his nose clean, he stands a good chance of being chairman of the board next year. But, you never know.
I'm working on it.
Absolutely. Scott brings a lot to the table. Probably his number one attribute, as I view it, is he is the one that looks at everything strategically more than all the rest of us. And part of that, there's the expression that some people like Scott always look at things from 30,000 feet. that may or may not be related to the fact that he's also a pilot and brings military background to NMA. But he really brings that strategic thinking and that professional polish to everything. And he is right now in charge of our strategic plan for the association as we move forward. He's been national secretary, then last year he was our national treasurer. So he is well positioned to speak on this topic this morning. So recognition and awards is important to Scott naturally, because he always thanks people. He also always recognizes people for their achievements and goes out of his way to let someone know they've done a good job. It is a pleasure for me to introduce our next presenter, Scott Chestnut.
Well, in that regard, thank you, Steve. I didn't want to do two thank yous really to start out with. One was for you, and I know others have already chimed in, but you know, Steve is leaving some big shoes to fill. You know, if you listen through the last hour, there is so much distilled wisdom in what he talks about, built up over his years and decades of leading this organization. We are all going to miss him. We know it's, however, it's long past time to give him an opportunity to retire. He has deserved that. He earned that. But it's just, it's awesome to think about the tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of lives he's impacted over several decades with his charismatic leadership of the organization. So thank you, Steve. We'll carry on as best we can. But there is a momentum. The organization has momentum, and it's because of all the people like you all that have dialed in today. I'm really excited about the fact that I think the last time I looked, 45 people, that's a pretty full room. I don't know if you realize it, but you are rare people. There was a Department of Labor study done a few years back that found that less than 8% of the population has ever served on any kind of a volunteer board. And if you have an actual VP position or leadership position, you're probably closer to 1%. So you are very special people. I think the other thing you realized is how universal leadership is to really everything that we do. You know, it's like Southwest Airlines. You know, you have a choice of several airlines back in the days when we had airlines. You know, but you know, you also have a choice of several volunteer organizations that you can spend your time or basically sacrifice your time for. And you've chosen this one, but I think it's a really wise choice. Leadership is a timeless attribute and something, whether you are a person mentoring in this organization, you know, more of an old head, kind of like me, or somebody that's up and coming and learning and developing that strong leadership, you are going to be able to contribute that to your community. So I thank you for being a part of this. Oh, by the way, these two people, you see them on this front slide, they're actually from our Hollywood chapter. I've never actually met them, but I hope they dial in one of these days. One other thing I'll mention about me, as Steve mentioned, I am an aviation fan and have been all my life. And that resulted in a 25-year career in the U.S. Air Force. And what's pertinent about that is when I look back on my time as a leader in the Air Force, probably one of the funnest things I did was recognition. And that's why when I had the opportunity to give this talk today, I jumped on it because I looked forward to the end of the week to a commander's call to be able to recognize people, to pin those medals on chests and recognize all the great things people have done. And of course, military people are volunteers anyway, so they start out, you know, volunteering to their community, to their nation. So it makes it kind of easy. But the people I think also within your chapters you're going to find are also pretty easy to recognize. There's some really great people. So I'm going to go through this today pretty quickly because we've consolidated this down. I've got 25 minutes, and as I looked at my timer, I'm down closer to 20 now. So I'm going to keep it rocking and rolling. I've divided it up into a couple different areas on this talk in the next few minutes. And The first is to talk a little bit about the individual awards, and then we'll talk about chapter awards. I will recommend to you that if you want more detail on any given slide, please download them. There are notes on notes page that will give you more detail, and hopefully I'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. But before we dive in, I'm just going to spend one more moment talking about the importance of recognition. There was a Harvard study that was done a few years ago also on recognition. And other than the fact that it's easy to do because it's free, in most cases anyway, or close to free, they found in this study that 40% of the workers that were surveyed worked harder when they were recognized. Maybe not surprising. What was really gave me pause was that 82% of the employees felt they were not recognized enough. So keep that in mind. And we're not just talking employees in your workplace, we're talking people obviously in the chapter or any large group that you work in where you as a leader have an opportunity to recognize. And finally, like I said, it's just a lot of fun. It's a win-win really for the leader and the person being recognized. A couple of tenets here to keep in mind as we go through all these awards available through NMA is that you don't need to wait for a really huge thing to happen to recognize somebody. Celebrate first downs, not just touchdowns. Some of the most fun that I've had recognizing has been for relatively small events, but they made a big difference to the individual, more than I typically would anticipate. Of course, you want to make it as fun as possible. Gather people together. It's the old praise in public idea. You know, a lot of different ways you can be very ingenious on making it fun. Making it personal is important. Know a little bit about the individual, so it's more sincere when you actually give the recognition. That takes a little bit of study as a leader, but it pays a lot of dividends. Making it timely is also important. Make sure that you recognize fairly quickly after the event so that it's easy for everybody to connect the event with the recognition. And then just remember, recognition is one of the privileges you have as a leader. It's not a task, it's not a chore. It is going to take a little bit of work, but it is something that is so rewarding to you that I've always considered it to be a privilege. Finally, before we jump into all of the options that you have through NMA to do recognition, keep in mind it's for some of the awards you're going to need to write a justification. Now, I recently did a seminar for our local chapter, Collins Leadership in Richardson, just on this topic, just on how to write recognition. And if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'd be happy to send you the slides or even visit if I can. But my talk on this came from a certain amount of research, plus the fact that I wrote a lot of recognition awards in my previous career. So keeping in mind that you will need to comply with the guidebooks and PPM to write a really good award justification. Grammar is always important. Making it concise in content and hard-hitting. Make sure it flows so it's easy to read by a judge. And then keep in mind that it will be read by a human being, by a judge, and make sure that the award citation connects with the spirit of the award. So the best thing I think about the NMA Awards program is the vast array of awards, and it gives you a lot of options. So we'll talk in the next few minutes about the fact that we've got individual awards that are at the national level. We also have individual awards that are available at the local level. And then we have some chapter and organizational awards. I'll let you take a look at this for just a moment. I see some questions on chat, and I will get to those. These I will go into a little bit of depth as we go through the slides. Here are the local awards. Again, I won't read these to you. Many of you are familiar with some of these awards, but they give you a lot of options. That's really the point I'd like to make, is you can customize an award for just about any situation. And then in addition to the individual awards, we have those for the chapters and councils, anniversary awards, growth awards. I know my home chapter has won the publications award a few times. The like you see several different ways that people can be recognized, or chapters rather, can be recognized. Some of these are somewhat automatic, and I'll touch on that. Some of these are just from the fact that you filled out your CAR1 or CAR2 diligently, and you're being recognized for that. So digging into the a little bit of detail on each of these awards, the next few slides will show some actual awards that were given in 2019. The first one here, probably the highest award that we have at the national level, is the Executive of the Year. Carmen Norwood from LMLA from Marietta was the receiver last year. These are a big win-win, and I think the point I'd like to make to you is that you win both ways. On the one hand, if this is your executive sponsor, it's going to be a way to really supercharge their knowledge of your chapter, and also their motivation and inspiration to continue helping your chapter. On the other hand, you get to know them better just through your research of the justification. And we got to hear from Carmen at the annual convention, and that was really a blessing for everybody as well. So a lot of goodness. These do take a little bit of extra time to put together in the justification, but well worth it. Another award, and this is a different angle, is the Hall of Fame. And here we're not recognizing an executive that's currently sitting in a position. Here we're recognizing an entire career, and typically somebody not in your company. Typically somebody that might be known by your company or is in your local community. And again, there's a big win-win here, because you get to learn about a leader in your community and their best practices that they've used. At the same time, they get to know about NMA, and they'll probably spread the word within their circles. You know, here we have Tony Michaels, who I'm sure is going to be speaking highly of NMA in his business circles, which may be beyond where the company, sponsoring company, actually happens to be operating. This is always a favorite, and this is the individual Member of the Year award. Now, this one actually has a hierarchy to it, kind of like the speech contest. These really start down at the chapter level. They can go through the council if you have one. And you can end up competing all the way up to the national level and be recognized at the annual convention. Cindy Falkenberg from Palmdale was the winner this last year, and again, I think that was a big win for everybody. Now here's an interesting and a fun one, and Steve has touched on these, but this is the McFeely Award. Now you say, well, that's an interesting name. Well, it's because Wilbur McFeely was generous enough to give us a grant to fund this, so the award is in his name appropriately. The idea here, though, is recognizing typically a celebrity that is a leader on leadership. You know, whether it's an author or a speaker. And John Maxwell in 2016 was a perfect example. He has written almost 100 books, I think, on leadership, large and small. I've read several of them. And again, it was a win-win. We got him on stage at the annual convention, and I hang on almost every word from him because he is such a wonderful mentor. But at the same time, we got recognition in the greater community also through recognizing a celebrity like John Maxwell. Now, where you can help on something like this, send us ideas. This is done from the national level, but we're looking for your ideas. If you have a celebrity that you think is appropriate for this, please let us know. Now, here's an award that I know Steve has told me he would like to give 10 times a year, and that is the New Chapter Development Award. And the idea here is we award people for finding new chapters and being able to help us to start from the ground up a new chapter. We will recognize that, and this is the award that we do that with. The award is presented at the annual conference, but it is probably one of the least known awards, unfortunately. Now you know about it. Another least known area sometimes is individual member recognition. And what we're meaning in this context is people that are maybe not in a chapter, that are solo members of NMA. and maybe even a spouse that's involved as part of a spousal membership of NMA. This award is also available for recognition, and you can see the form that we use for it there. This is our way of recognizing two very special classes of NMA membership where people contribute their personal time and talents, but it's outside of the normal chapter and pattern of activity. Then we come to chapter and council level awards, and these do require some approval up through the directors for either for your chapter or for your council. The difference between the gold and silver knight is the gold knight award is given at the council level. So here in my world, that's the North Texas Council. The silver knight award is given through the local chapter. Now, something to note about this is they're typically given to executives. So this, in a sense, can be a precursor to the national level executive award. So you could go after this for your executive sponsor because you have a little better control of it at your chapter or council level. And then you could also later perhaps compete that individual at the national level. These are also win-wins for the same reason I mentioned on the National Executive of the Year. And that's where I've seen it happen in our council and our chapter. So you go down about another step here to individual recognition, and this is where we really have a wonderful array of awards that are available. The Leadership Award in the center of the screen is a contemporary award available for purchase by the chapters and councils. It can be presented to any member who is in good standing and has exhibited outstanding leadership abilities through the council or the chapter. The Distinguished Recognition Award that you see on the left is used to thank anyone in your chapter or council who is deserving of special recognition for their contributions, dedication, and hard work. Then the Outstanding Service Award on the right is a beautiful light blue clear crystal, as you can see, and it is for peak performance that you're recognizing in the chapter. Again, you can kind of define these and customize a little bit to your use. And then really some of the fun ones, and these are even a little bit less expensive. They're what I would call discrete awards, meaning that they don't take up a lot of space. You can easily put them in your hutch behind your desk, that kind of thing. But you've got one that's just simply saying thank you, like Steve introduced at the beginning, to somebody that's done a great job in your chapter. The Star Award, over on the right-hand side there, is, for, again, an outstanding contributor. Probably my favorite, though, is the one in the middle, and that's the Servant Leader Award. And that's for somebody that has shown real dedication to serving others and doing that in a leadership capacity. That one is a more recently added award by popularity, basically. People really like that idea, so we were able to add that from the national level. And all the way down really to certificates. You can recognize a local organization that has supported you, like in the upper right-hand corner, Nebraska State Government. You can recognize an individual here. These are, of course, really easy to do. They can either be printed at the national level for you, or you can get the template and print locally. But this is where it gets down to recognizing first downs and not just touchdowns, and you can do that with these certificates. And then these are always fun. The anniversary awards is like, it's your reward for survival for a period of time, which is no small thing. But what I'd like to point out here is help us out on these. We try to track this from the national level. But if you're a leader in your chapter and you're coming up on an anniversary, a 25th or a 50th, please let us know because you will be doing a favor for all the people in your chapter that will really enjoy this kind of recognition. And of course, then on the making it fun principle, you can combine this kind of award together with a special party or recognition in your own chapter for that anniversary. And I've seen that be really fun within the chapters. Now, the Programs Award and the Community Service Award, the Community Service Award is presented to chapters again, and these are ones that have demonstrated creativity and innovation in promoting community service activities within the chapter. The Chapter Programs Award, on the other hand, is received by conducting monthly programs that enhance the members' professional and/or personal growth when they attend the chapter. So these are, again, guidelines for these are in the guidebooks, the PPM, and I would consider these. So I know there's a lot of chapters that are really outstanding, really in both of these areas. The final area of award opportunity really is kind of on autopilot. It's the Excellent, Superior, and Outstanding Awards, and these come from completing your CAR1 and CAR2 forms. So let's talk about that for a minute. The big takeaway here is that I know I've been using the term win-win probably too much, but this is another win-win because the CAR1 form was originally designed to help guide chapters to success. In other words, the things that you find that you're graded on in the CAR1 and CAR2 are those things that NMA has found over the years are activities that will lead to success. If you score well in all those things, you will have a successful chapter. So that's the win-win. And at the same time, you'll be recognized for having a successful chapter through these CAR1 and CAR2 reports. Here are some of the areas that are graded, and those of you that fill these out on a regular basis know this, but the rest of you can help out your individual in your chapter that does this by sending them more information on what you're doing administratively, member services, growth, and community services for the chapter, for instance. And then these activities that you see here for the council, for the CAR2, those are smaller groups. So again, probably even more important that you help out your council leadership in knowing what's going on and helping them to fill out a really complete CAR2 report for the council. Now, we've been upgrading the forms over time, so we try to keep these current. If you have suggestions for how the forms could be better, let us know. We are working towards a time, Daryl's not going to like this, we're working towards a time where maybe these will be all online. They're not there yet, but we're working on it, and we have the greatest people working on it right now. So these forms, again, are available on nma.org and available for download. There is a little bit of math that goes into some of the awards here. It is not as hard as it looks, believe me. It just takes studying it a little bit. But the reason we have some math in there is to try to keep the whole process really fair for all sides of chapters. So with several of the awards, like the Growth Award, we do have adjustments and weighting to the scoring so that it's fair again to all chapters. Here is an example of that with the size groups that we use for chapters. And again, on a growth award, you wouldn't want to have a very small 50-person chapter being judged necessarily against a huge 2,000 member chapter that we do have. So this is how we try to keep this fair and above board. So that brings me to within a few minutes of my 25 minutes. And I really appreciate everybody, again, dialing in today. Again, you're special people, and I think you're in the right place, though. We always need leadership, and as Steve mentioned, during crises like this, we need it even more. So it's good that we keep developing that. I'll again remind you, you can download the slides. They have notes on them that give you a little bit more detail. There's also the guidebooks at nma1.org. And I will now stop and open it up to questions, either through Daryl or through the chat. Anybody wants to unmute? If you have questions, you're welcome to do so.
Now, we certainly don't want to make Scott feel unloved. So maybe Somebody can even make up a question.
Oh, okay, I can say something. This is Avis.
Hi, Avis.
How are you this morning?
Great, thank you.
One of the several of the chapters that I've worked with over the years were very reluctant to fill out that form because they just didn't think that was very important. They also thought it was an awful lot of work, and it can be time consuming until you get used to it. If you have never tried to work with it, don't be intimidated by all the information that is possible to enter. You want to find the activities that you do and report those. And Dayton is very good about having you report what you do, and often they will decide whether you get points or whether you get more points than what you asked for. But one thing that I pointed out to the chapters who were reluctant to do the form was it was a very good way for them to check on a regular basis their progress to their goals and objectives for the year.
Absolutely.
And several of them started filling out the form just for that reason, and then were absolutely thrilled when they wound up with an outstanding chapter award and didn't even know they were that good.
Yeah, there was a term on the slide, and I may not have mentioned it, but the term roadmap. It really, the CAR1, CAR2 end up being a very good roadmap for your chapter towards success, like you mentioned, Avis. So that's a great point.
And thanks for mentioning the activity report for the individual members, because that is something new. We have a lot of individual members and they're not using it. And again, that particular one is much more widespread than the chapters. If anybody looks at it, you'd be surprised at all the activities for which you can get credit that are above and beyond what you do for NMA.
No, that's a great point.
Okay, I'm done. I'm muting myself.
Okay.
This is Heather Bates, and I actually have a question. How do you know if you are filling out the CAR1 correctly?
Well, is Steve or Sue or Robin, they're the experts. Are they online? Or Steve, would you like to address that?
Well, this is Avis again. I can say something. They are very good about checking the reports that they get and adjusting it and correcting it for you a lot of the time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I would mention is give Robin a call. She's very accessible, and I would say, do the best you can and give her a call, talk through it. She is very willing to help out individual chapters on that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, Scott, this is Colin Cato from the Nokia NLA.
Hi, Colin.
Hey, for the recognition in awards, is there a table that shows you like the deadline for submitting? Like I saw all the various awards, but the deadline for that, for submission for the year?
That is a great question. I'll defer that to Steve again. Steve, do we have anything at the national level for that?
Yes, publications and the programs award, the deadline is June 1. And then for Member of the Year, Executive of the Year, and Hall of Fame, that has been moved to June 15th. And if for some reason somebody has a real problem with that, contact us and we'll try and work with you. The problem is all those awards are reviewed by the recognition committee, and everything that comes in has to be compiled, has to be sent back out. All the submissions are reviewed. Everything is ranked. And then those numbers are tabulated. Then we find out who the winners are. Then we have to make sure that those people will be available to receive their award. And then we have the July board meeting where the recognition committee officially stamps things. And then we have to do all the publicizing of that stuff in all of our conference materials. So the deadlines aren't just arbitrary deadlines. They are important to adhere to if at all possible, because there's so much work that has to go on once those come in here. And, you know, by the time, let's say, the executive of the year has gone out to the recognition committee to look at, it's just too late to deal with anything that comes in after the fact because the judging has already been done. So we'll work with you to the extent that we can, but it may only be a day or two.
Oh,
Colin,
sure.
Yeah, to your point, Colin, I will work with the board to make sure that we make all that more visible. You know, and I share your interest in that because it's come up with our chapter 2 a few times. So really great point, and we'll work on making it really more visible to the overall organization.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, I want to thank you for an outstanding job, as always, and you made it interesting. Recognition and awards isn't always done in a way, I think, that people get excited about it. You did a really nice job of conveying this information. Colin, we appreciate your question. Heather, you too. And Scott, we'll let you go, and I'll let Daryl get our next presenter set up here. And I'm pleased to introduce the individual who will be talking about secretary and treasurer, 2 very important positions in the chapter, usually held by a couple of different people. Some chapters have recording secretaries and membership secretaries. That's one of the things you learn at NMA is we're all unique and all of our chapters are unique. And they approach filling officer vacancies a little bit different. But we are lucky in that Glenn Button has a lot of experience both at the chapter level and now at the national level as a member of our NMA Board of Directors. Glenn works for Boeing in Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, California. He also could have done a nice job with recognition and awards because Glenn is another one of those people who is a consummate gentleman and always finds time to thank the staff and other members of the board for anything that they do. So it is a pleasure to introduce Glenn, and I will turn this show over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And thank you, Scott. As this year's recognition committee chair, I appreciate you covering that so very well.
You bet. Thanks, Glenn.
So we'll see if we can keep this interesting for all of you, even if neither of these roles are your current responsibility. Daryl, go to the next slide, please. And Daryl and I will be playing tag team through this. But here you can see that the secretary role is a vital role of communication, making those individual connections between the chapter and, excuse me, and the NMA staff, the national staff, and also to the administrators within their company, their city, their medical organization, whatever, wherever your chapter happens to reside. But the distributing of notices and agendas, we'll get to that in more detail. Status reports, keeping everyone current on what's going on, and keeping track of the results of meetings. The minutes, the meeting documents really provide a good reference that then anyone in the chapter can refer back, and there's no question of, well, gosh, I don't remember that clearly. Everything's written down, so it avoids any of those kinds of confusion. Managing and maintaining the membership records, this would be done in parallel or in concert with the membership chair, and Clay Van Meter, he covered that really well in the final presentation yesterday. And coordinating with other chapter leaders, similar to the president, you're in a role of coordinating all the different things that are going on and helping keep everything synchronized and keep everyone aware. This office has quite a bit of overlap with a position that can be known as communications, And I know that Daryl Wacker, new to the NMA staff, and we're delighted to have him on board. He's going to be covering that in the next presentation. Next slide. So one of the things that Secretary does, those individual communications, reaching out to especially new members, but can be reaching out to prospective members as well. And you always want to not only bring emerging members, emerging leaders into your chapter, but you also want to reach out, as Steve mentioned, with the turnover that happens among the executive ranks of any organization. You want to be reaching out to those executive leaders of your sponsoring organization and making sure that they feel welcome to join either individual meetings or to join as a member. But that's one of the huge benefits of chapter meetings, is being able to associate with those company leaders, those organization leaders and executives in a non-work setting. So it's a great time to build those relationships. And a lot of this, you can see, is coordination. The prospective and new members coordinating with the membership, coordinating with chapter leaders is something you'll do, linking arms with your president, reminding membership about upcoming events. You'll partner with the programs and community activities chairs, and letting national know each year as you have elections and as you have new board members. The NMA National organization, we'd like to think that they're telepathic, but they really need us to inform them of who are the new officers of the organization, and that falls to the secretary. And accurate membership rosters. You don't want to be paying for too many or too few members in the national dues, and you know, just keep those accurate and well synchronized. Next slide. So these principles that you see here, the meeting invitations, the agenda, the minutes, these are the fundamentals, the good practices for running any successful meeting in any organization, but especially in your chapter, is how it comes into this presentation. And the meeting invitations is not just how to connect with the Zoom meeting or the WebEx meeting, but it's which conference room it's going to be in, how long the meeting's going to last. Hopefully we'll get back to conference rooms here shortly. And having expected outcomes, but putting an agenda into the meeting invitation. For some meetings, it could be just a couple points of an agenda. For a large chapter officer meeting, the president may put together a formal agenda, and they should. But letting people know what to expect when they come into this meeting, into any meeting, just helps them be properly prepared. And lastly, in the minutes, one of the things that you see here is incorporating or documenting any actions, who was assigned to that, and the completion dates. As we all know, if you have a goal or an action without a date, it's just a wish. And that's not a good way to get things done. Okay, next slide. So here you can see some of the reporting activities, membership, linking arms with your membership chair, or maybe that's a combined office, but making sure that either on an annual basis, if your chapter does dues that way, or on a monthly basis, if you've got payroll deduction, and certainly a convenience that many organizations do offer, keeping up on that monthly, but keeping NMA National Office informed of the latest numbers, and we'll get into more detail in that here shortly. And membership reports, well, we'll get to that in more detail, but the tiered membership is something that not everyone might be aware. This is something that's in the NMA Policies and Procedures Manual, section 210, if you want to look that up. The PPM, the Policies and Procedures Manual, is in the governing documents section of the NMA members main menu on nma1.org. So you can find that PPM there and research not only the tiered memberships, the criteria, the cost, the recognition associated with each of those national tiers. There's, as you might expect, a number of good things to be aware in that PPM that's available on the NMA1 website. Next slide. So several people this morning, Steve, Scott, have talked about the CAR1 report. And as others have mentioned, this is a roadmap. This is a good reminder of the things that a successful chapter should be doing, recording them, and getting rewarded for it all. Those ingredients of a successful chapter that Steve shared earlier, many of those show up with point value credit on the CAR1 form. So take a look at that. If there are areas of the form that your chapter doesn't utilize, talk about that as a chapter and the chapter officers and figure out, is this something that we should be doing, or should we just not pay attention to that section of the CAR1? Use it as it makes sense for your chapter. And dues, there is a registration fee. Reinstated members have that registration fee waived. So once you're NMA, you're always NMA, which is good. And for the current members, there is a fee schedule, whether it's monthly or yearly. And we can look at your charter date, your fiscal year, to determine the dates on that. Retirees staying with NMA pay no dues, which is nice. So that way, if someone is retiring from your chapter, but still staying available as a resource, that's beneficial for your organization, and it doesn't cost them anything at the national level. So it keeps things affordable all the way around. There is, just in recent years, membership has been extended to spousal members, and at a nominal $25 a year rate. And then they get discounts on the conference attendance. Looking forward to heading over to the Carolinas. So the registration fees, we talked about that, both chapter registration fees and individual registration fees. If your chapter is having a member drive, and I believe NMA allows at least one, possibly twice a year, that the registration fees may be waived, or maybe that's waived at your chapter level. But there are incentives as you have a member drive to encourage new members. Membership roster, you can substitute names of people coming in and going out, but the registration fees still apply. Next slide. So here's what a membership sheet, membership worksheet looks like. And one of the important areas on this is the middle column, and you get 25 extra CAR1 points if you provide the email addresses of all the members of your chapter. And that allows your members to have access to the latest info that comes out from NMA National. So that's good. Next slide. And so here we talked about the fiscal year and the due dates. Chances are your fiscal year ends either on June or December, but as with any corporation, it could end any month of the year. So here's what your due dates would be. If it's June that your fiscal year ends, then your dues, your annual dues would be due by the end of September. So you've got July, August, and September to get that done. So, and you can look, that same 3-month offset is all the way down this. Next slide. And here's the annual dues form. And you can see there's spaces for new members, spaces for continuing members, for spousal members, all these different areas. Very simple to fill out, and the arithmetic is right there for you. Next slide. And if you're paying dues on a monthly basis, you'll work on, or if you have payroll deduction, a wonderful thing. And again, work with your HR organizations and make sure that if this is possible within your sponsoring organization, it just makes things a lot easier. But similar information to the annual, and just get it submitted each month. Okay. And now I'm ready for the next slide. So let me jump from secretary over to treasurer, and we'll finish up with this. The chief financial officer of the organization, the finance vice president, the director of finance, whatever it's called within your chapter. This is the person who's going to be taking care of the receipts, the disbursement of funds, preparing a well-rounded budget, making sure that you coordinate with all of the appropriate members of your board to have that budget balanced. And not only balanced, that your income will be greater than your outgo, but also to have it balanced between the various priorities of your chapter, and make sure that you're not only aligning that with your chapter's mission statement, but also with your sponsoring organization, and that communication, coordination with your HR, with your learning organization, so that you can provide those mutual benefits between your chapter and your sponsoring organization. So make sure that your budget represents your priorities, the bottom line there. And as you work on the reporting the balance of income and expenses, it's actually good to have a second set of eyes, making sure that that's being handled properly. And I know when I was holding the office, and it was called Director of Finance, but I appreciated the second set of eyes and the mentor that I had when I was in that position that helped me through that year. And recording receipts on a timely basis, paying bills, just like at home, you want to get them done on time. So nothing overly complicated about that. And then we get down to the bottom line here of reporting annually to the IRS. And that takes 2 forms, and we'll see that on the next slide. And so here I'm sorry, it's actually the slide after, but that's okay. Where we are here, no, don't go forward. The budgeting, the reporting, the banking, making sure that, again, your budget matches your chapter's priorities and is properly aligned that way. And it's good to not only plan for the year which has started, but also to look forward to the next year as you go through the current year, and see what could we do better next year, and to have the budget a living document that way. Reporting, making sure that you're keeping everything balanced and recorded properly, and that allows you to then effectively have your IRS tax forms prepared and submitted appropriately, but also to keep current with your banking. You certainly don't want any fees that are not necessary, and so it's always good to keep things, keep accounts current. And for any chapter, There may be unforeseen circumstances that we've seen a lot of those recently, but people could get a job with a different organization or for whatever reason. It's good to make sure there's not just one authorized signature, but have a backup, have a couple backups. Have 3 authorized signatures, and that way you're never left in the lurch, even when someone's on vacation or anything else. Okay, and now we're ready to go to the delightful topic of taxes. And many of you may have wondered, so what kind of a 501c status do we have? And NMA and chapters as well have the 501c6 tax exempt status, which means that the dues that chapter members pay are not tax deductible, unfortunately, but the organization will be tax exempt, which is good. And then there's not only the tax filings, the income tax returns, but there's also a Form 990. And I cannot stress too much the importance of getting this 990 form submitted on time. What you don't want to do is to have to write a letter to the IRS begging for sympathy. That was not a pleasant task that I had once. So make sure that, little personal experience there, make sure you get those Form 990s in on time and keep your nonprofit status. Makes a huge difference. So you may be able to file the Form 990EZ, you may be able to file the Form 990N, but just make sure you understand which Form 990 and get it in on time. And then there's the filing of your taxes, and that's where your organization may be tax exempt, but some states still require a nominal filing fee. And so California is really good at collecting taxes. So just make sure that you're working with competent tax help, tax guidance, hire someone to file your taxes, do whatever it takes to get that correctly submitted and on time again. And the last slide is about transitions. And here's where you really need to make sure that not only for secretary or for treasurer, but also for any office in your chapter, it's good to have a manual, a tip sheet, a checklist for each office, so that not only for performing that office with the current person assigned, but also for the benefit of the next person or the person after that who will be coming into the office without the same level of experience that you currently have. So keep good records, provide instructions that the next person can use to their advantage. And with that, I'm ready to open for questions or lessons learned that others want to share.
Yeah, this is Avis.
Hi, Avis.
How are you? Nice to hear your voice, because I certainly couldn't hear it on the Zoom call earlier this week.
Oh, yeah. We have a really bad echo.
Yeah, we got to fix that. Filing the 990 information report. It's very important that you do that chapters and councils do that every year. Because if you don't do that for 3 years, the IRS automatically drops you from the list of exempt entities. And you don't want that to happen, because it is extremely unpleasant to get reinstated on that list.
Yeah, much better to keep your tax exempt status and not have to go through the reclaiming of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I speak from experience. not because we didn't file our information returns, but because the IRS, just so that you'll know, NMA every July sends the IRS a list of chapters and councils associated with NMA. And way back in 2006, the IRS, we were shown as active on that list, but when the IRS entered into their database, they said we had disaffiliated. And it took me a year and a half when we found out, took me a year and a half to get the council reinstated. So you do not want to be dropped off that list.
And that's important. We've been talking about much of this at a chapter level and the CAR1 form, but there's also a council level, a group of chapters, and they are a separate corporation and need to do the same thing, and also to keep track of the good things that they do on the CAR2 form, which is
talking about the CAR1 forms, talking about the CAR1 and CAR2 forms. If you look on there, you'll see that NMA gives you a whopping 25 points for submitting your 990 to the IRS on time. And the reason we did that, and I happened to be on the recognition committee the year that we did it, the reason we did that was because so many chapters and councils were not submitting the form. So we thought, well, if we give them a whopping reward on the CAR1 and CAR2s, they'll start doing it, and it worked. There are more chapters and councils submitting that form on time than we used to have. And Scott, the recognition committee is the funnest committee to sit on.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, I'm muting myself again.
Yeah, Glenn, I'll chime in. This is Scott. You know, the secretary and the treasurer positions, in my experience, have been two of the more intimidating ones for some folks. You know that, and I found kind of the opposite. You know, once you dig into them, you may find out that you really enjoy them. I know that I've been able to do both, and in particular, the treasurer position, I actually enjoyed. I can say that now because I don't think they're going to put me back in it again. It actually keyed in on some, finance classes I had taken previously. And so I guess what I'm saying to those of you that might be considering either of those positions, keep in mind that this is a learning laboratory, NMA, the entire structure really is. And sometimes you'll find when you jump into some of these things that they resonate with other areas of your personality or your background that you didn't really realize, that could resonate. The other thing I'll mention about each of these is, as intimidating as they may seem, you can get a lot of help. I know as secretary, for instance, I figured out pretty quickly who the really good note takers were in the room and asked them to share their notes with me. And that helped immensely on me making sure I could get the right minutes out, as a secretary. Same thing was true, as a treasurer, even though I understood most of the numbers. There are people out there that will be willing to help you within your chapter or your council. So I would use that. But again, don't be afraid of either of those positions.
One of the greatest joys of being a treasurer is to produce a budget that is actually balanced.
Well, that's always a great feeling, whether it's an NMA or in your own home.
Yeah.
Indeed. I know, speaking to one of your points, I know a family which includes some nationally ranked tennis players, and they have a saying in their family that either you're winning or you're learning. And this is, you're learning among friends, and you're learning among supporters, and you're learning among people that are willing to help. So it's the best place to learn.
In a safe environment.
Say that again.
All righty. Does anyone else have questions for Glenn? Avis, I knew you were going to jump in about the 990, and I appreciate it, because those of you that don't know, Avis is kind of the grand dame of the chapters in Southern California, and she keeps them in line. She's also a graduate magna cum laude of the College of Hard Knocks. If anybody's ever had a problem, she's experienced it and helped people get through it. So appreciate the advice on the 990. Anybody else for Glenn? All right, then I want to thank Mr. Button for doing an outstanding job. We appreciate the 3-hour time difference, and you got up early and logged on and been ready to go, and you made a complicated workshop easy for people to understand. So thank you for that. Now I have the
Well,
pleasure.
thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. All right, so now we're down to our last presentation. Geez, there were times earlier this week as we were in here setting up the green screen and getting the computers checked out to make sure everything would function appropriately. Today seemed like a distant event, and suddenly here we are winding down. Today you get to meet our new website and meeting planning manager. Daryl officially started April 1, but actually we put him to work a little bit in March because he wanted to. And he's the newest member of our NMA family. He brings a great background to the organization. And I don't know that I've ever seen anyone get as acclimated as quickly as he, or I know we've never had anybody come on board and be embraced by the rest of the staff and become part of the team and the NMA family so quickly. We are delighted to have him on board. And when we were going down the list of all the webinars, or all the sessions today, we had a couple of gaps. And he goes, I would be more than willing to do the one on communications and public relations. And he didn't have to say that twice. So we said, you're on. So I will say that one more time. Daryl, you're on.
Thank you, Steve. One of the things Steve didn't tell you is I bring 15 years of experience in the news media to NMA. So not the fake news, though. We told the truth in our job. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is just communication both with your members and your non-members. And your communication should be aiming in both directions most of the time. So some of the ways that I'm sure chapters are communicating is through the mass media, chapter newsletter. This can be either hard copy or an electronic copy, articles in your company's newsletters, email. Some chapters have a website. And as Steve reminded yesterday, if it would be good if those would be brought up to date, because some of them we noticed have got some old information. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. These are all areas that we on the national level, one of the things I'm going to be stressing, and I know Brian has also mentioned as we've been in communication with him, is our social media presence and getting those up and running on a more consistent basis. And one of the things that's not mentioned on the slide, but another area of communication can be your local newspapers or your local business journals. As newspaper staffs around the country have been slashed in recent years, newspapers are starving for local material. So if your chapter is doing, say a Make-A-Wish presentation, or you have an exceptional speaker or some program that you're doing, shooting a note out to the business editor at your local newspaper, or your most larger cities have business journals. Ours is called the Dayton Business Journal. These can be other areas as well. They would probably welcome a photo and a few paragraphs, and you could get some recognition outside of your normal way of getting communication out as well. Then there's face-to-face communication. Nothing substitutes that. I think one of the things we've all found over the last 6 weeks or so is that, as well as working from home, there's no substitute for being with your colleagues and working among people. Lunch and learn sessions are very good. Mentoring programs, networking with executives and others at chapter events. All these are important parts of your chapter's communication program. And frankly, probably more important than all the other ones put together is the relationships. Let's talk a little bit about newsletters. So newsletters inform people of what you're doing, not just your members. Remember, newsletters can also be picked up from non-members. So you always want to think about who your audience is, who you're trying to reach. Newsletters will create an image of your chapter. It tells people what activities are going on and are coming up down the road. You can use it for educational purpose. Newsletters from, say, one of your chapter leaders or the NMA executive director. You can use all kinds of sorts of things, but for educational service, or certainly. And then you want to use it to tease and generate interest to people outside of your chapter, people who are not members but are prospective members. Make it interesting and especially tell the community service projects that you're doing. What benefit is membership in the NMA chapter to that person? And it also allows for feedback. You can do readership surveys on your chapter activities, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways for people to get information back to you as well. Publishing a newsletter, it's not as intimidating as it sounds, but there are some things to keep in mind. You want to know your mission. So what am I trying to communicate here? Who am I communicating to? So you define your audience. Reinforce key messages. And this is not just true in newsletters. This is also true using social media. One of the things that you will find is repetition of important items is key. I'm sure you noticed we sent out multiple reminders about the CLT. Every time we did, we picked up 6 or 8 people who registered. And it's because not everyone sees, not everyone's on Facebook, not everyone's on Twitter when you send that first tweet or that first email or first communication. So the more often, without overwhelming people, that you can send out those kind of messages or those kind of reminders, you will hit people when they're looking. So keep that in mind. Format for a newsletter. One of the big things is a budget. Are you going to have a print copy, or is it just an electronic copy? Obviously, a print copy is going to cost significantly more, especially if you have a large chapter. So determine that budget, whatever your chapter determines, and then you stick with that budget. That'll be part of the process in determining whether it's print or electronic. You want to stay on schedule, meet deadlines. Every publication ever printed has deadlines, and that is true of your chapter newsletter as well. And then use different distribution methods. Even if you're using a print newsletter, you still want to have an electronic copy, because a lot of people, frankly, won't pick up the print copy now, but they will when they're traveling or maybe sitting in an airport somewhere, look at it on their phone or their tablet. So you want to use as many distribution methods that make sense for your membership, and as you know your membership, you'll know what the best way is to do that. Okay, format. Determine a layout and masthead. Masthead is just the term. When you pick up your daily newspaper, if you still pick up a newspaper, that's what's at the top of the front page. It's the name, the month, publication date, et cetera, et cetera. So that will always be the same. You want to have regular features, which can include your president and your national director columns. Upcoming events calendar is always important, and your committee reports. You may or may not want to have long committee reports. If they are long, then maybe you provide links to them, because depending, again, what your budget is and whether this is a print or a hard electronic newsletter. You want to have good art. Avoid grip and grin and firing squad shots, although some of those are actually okay. It depends on the subject, but that should not be your main art most of the time. I will tell you, as a journalist, one of the things that we stress every day is good art grabs attention. So a photo of a service project your chapter is involved in toward the top of your front page, that makes people pick it up and want to say, oh, what is this? So think about the images you use and that kind of thing. So that's important. Just remember to be professional. The newsletter is a reflection of your company, your chapter, and you. And as the editor, as the writers, you know, it's a reflection on all of you. So have a purpose for every item and proofread, proofread, proofread. Okay, sources of information. We want to make sure that our sources are factual. The best source is in person. If you have, say you have a presenter who is speaking to your chapter at your general meeting 1 month, record the presenter if they allow that. And then if someone's going to write up a brief article or whatever, they can take some direct quotes from that presentation and use that. And again, that way you're making sure you're using facts. Your company executives can be great sources of information. In the NMA National Office, chapter leadership, your boosters, all of these are good sources for information. So you want to have regular reports from your company and your committees. And then what's called fillers, that can be articles that you can get off the NMA website. I can send those to you. It might be a book review. It can be an article from the internet. You do have to be cautious with articles from the internet. There are copyright laws that come into play there. If you're not certain whether something can be reprinted for free, don't print it, because that can get you in a world of trouble. Remember the 5 W's when you're writing any article or even a photo caption. Who, when, where, what, why, and how. Basic things we all learned in elementary school English, hopefully. More content, human interest stories, people in action, people doing service projects. This is always a great one. I think, you know, the more you tell the stories to people of the service projects that you're doing, or the community projects, or projects inside your own company. Maybe you're raising money for Make-A-Wish or Toys for Tots, or you're out doing a cleanup day or whatever. Remember, your company's name is on your shirts. That I think that was mentioned yesterday. And so these are great ways to get goodwill for your company, your chapter, out in the community. And this is also a good way to attract new members. People like to be part of things, of organizations that are doing good work. Not only does this organization help them in their career, but if they know there's going to be volunteer activities and places that they can do service work, that will also be attractive as well. One key thing, keep your articles short. The attention span for today is just so short that, you know, I used to tell my reporters, look, I'd like an 18-inch story, which in Microsoft Word translates to about 500 words. Nowadays, I'm looking more like 8 inches. You want 200, 250 word articles, something that someone can read in a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. It's very rare that someone's going to pick up one article and read it for 15 minutes. That's just not the life we all live today. So, okay, I'm not going to go over every one of these, but NMA does have a publications contest, and the judging on that is done on a point basis. You'll see here 8 different parts of the NMA contest. And if you go to the NMA website, all of this is spelled out on the publication contest form. And there's a checklist there of everything you can look at. There's the other 8. So you got 16 points available in Part A. You get also receive a point for every newsletter you publish. So if you publish one every month, that's an additional 12 points. If you're quarterly, obviously that would be 4 points. Then part B is judging based on format, balance of pictures and graphics, white space. You want to have a balance of those things. Does the publication look interesting? Is it attractive, professional looking? Are there captions with the pictures and graphics? Don't just put a picture on a page and then don't tell people what it is. Explain, this is Joe Smith getting an award for XYZ. So make sure people know what the purpose of the picture is. Is the quality of pictures and graphics good? This used to be a bigger problem before the modern iPhones and phones that we all carry. All of those phones will take photos high enough quality that you should rarely have this kind of a problem anymore. Is the publication NMA oriented, people oriented, and interesting? Is there a variety of articles? Article headlines, do they complement and support the articles? You want to make sure your headline says something about what's in the article. And ideally, when you write an article, your headline should be supported in the first paragraph of that article. And if those two don't match, then you might want to rethink your headline. Is your masthead attractive and functional? Again, the biggest part of the masthead is to tell you the name of your publication, the month and year that it was published. But again, the more attention grabbing it is, the greater chance you have of people picking up your newsletter. Are the articles readable, flowing, and understandable? This is a big one. This is where your proofreading comes into play. Make sure that the person you have proofreading, or ideally the people you have proofreading, understands English well, has a good grammar background. The more eyes you get on an article, the better. I've written for 15 years in my career, and there's never once been an article of my own that when I went back the next day that I didn't have edits to do. So try to avoid writing the way you talk, because very few of us talk grammatically correct. So you want to make sure we talk with a lot more commas and pauses than what we would actually write. So again, that's where your proofreading comes into play. And then, does the publication meet overall NMA publication objectives? This is a summary, but special points are awarded to show the value of being part of the NMA to the chapter members. And again, this is one of the big ways that your chapter members, and again, those outside the chapter, can know about NMA. So this is the electronic size group winner from the 2019. Notice this is blueprint from NMA in Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan. You notice it's very clean, has a great masthead at the top. Then down below, it's got the date. The art is really good art. This is I haven't seen the other pages of this, but just from the front of this, you can tell how well this is put together. Email. So there are some challenges with email. I'm not sure bandwidth size is much of a problem anymore, unless maybe you're at home and you're trying to send a large volume of email. But there are problems with emails that come into play. Many company email systems will filter emails with attachments, especially if they're coming from an unfamiliar email address, or if it has an attachment, it may not let you download it for security reasons. So these are all some of the obstacles you face with email. You want to make sure that we're always following email etiquette. But if you're going to send an electronic newsletter, I would also suggest, if you have a chapter Facebook page, chapter email, or I'm sorry, chapter website. Also share that there, share a link. If you can have that link, put on your website, and then share the link to that on Facebook and or Twitter. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get around the whole attachment thing. The other part of that problem is if you have a, say a 10-page PDF that is heavy with art, that'll be a large file, and some company email servers won't let files of a certain size go through. So that's another thing to consider with email. Sending out bulk emails is getting harder every day. Things are going to get identified as spam, so you'll want to keep that in mind as well. Some challenges for email, just the same as they are really for a newsletter. Content, your copy editing, you want your content to be interesting, but you also want it to be professional. You want to have a standard template, look and design. Constant contact is what we send out from here at the national office. And if you notice, most of those emails look very similar. So you want to make sure you don't have any broken links in an email. So when people, if you say, hey, here's our newsletter, when they click on that link, it goes to the newsletter. One of the things I spent the last couple of days uploading all of the presentations for this, and every one I posted, I went and checked to make sure it went to the right presentation, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to make sure that your links work. Solutions is, if you're going to use email, make sure you're using it on a regular basis, the same way as you would a newsletter. So you want the same consistency and time. You can use email to publicize deadlines, guidelines for communications. And again, post your publications on the web if you can. That way people can go straight there. They can download that PDF, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, inform versus communicate, the difference between the two. So when you inform someone about something, the message is the key. You're imparting knowledge, you're satisfying a need to know, you're enabling a work or project to be done, and this can be done through print, electronics, video, impersonal media, can be done a lot of ways. When you communicate, the method is the key. You influence feelings, you build relationships, you get buy-in and commitment, and it requires face-to-face personal interaction and results in a behavior change. And this communication face-to-face, I think, there's just no substitute for that. And I think, again, we all have found that, especially through over the last 6 weeks. Finally, communications and leadership, what leaders do. Leaders face reality. They set clear and simple vision. They execute tactics, establish stretch challenges to push an organization or push an individual beyond where they're at. They commit, exceed plans, communicate, teach, and connect. And effective communication is integral to other leadership imperatives. So with that, I will open up to any questions.
I have a couple of comments.
Go ahead, Avis.
When you were talking about the publications contest, would you explain who does the evaluations of Part B? You didn't make that clear.
Sue, are you on? Can you answer that? Who does the evaluation of Part B on the publications contest? I don't know that yet.
It goes to the recognition committee.
Okay.
And they do it. Your comment about proofreading, that is very important. You really do need extra eyes, and you probably don't know it yet, but I do the final copy edit on break time.
Okay, well, you'll be getting one soon because that's one of the things I'm working on. So.
Okay, a question about newsletters. Do you ever use a storyboard to help you produce newsletters?
I've not. I typically have used Adobe in design.
Well, a storyboard is really a great tool. It's one that I learned years ago when I was a member of the Society for Technical Communicators. You were talking about keeping deadlines. What the storyboard does, you start when you first start thinking about a newsletter, you put together a chart that has the articles. You've got your list of standard articles, then you've got your list of feature articles. Who is assigned to writing that article, the date that it is due to the editor, and the date that the newsletter will be published. And it's a great tool for making sure everybody knows what they have to do and when they have to do it. And it gives the editor time to do proper edits and layout and design and get multiple proofreadings done and put out a polished newsletter, be it print or electronic. And it's a great tool, particularly for novice chapter offices who don't have much experience in writing and in publication. And it's a very simple tool, but it's a very effective tool.
Okay, thank you.
Is this a free tool or is this on a website? I'm sorry, I missed the earlier part.
Can you speak a little louder?
I said, is this a free tool?
Yeah, I can send Daryl a copy of one of my storyboards, and he can make it available.
Yeah, please do.
You can also Google storyboarding. It's very popular. It's been out there for years. People call it different things,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can find information on the internet in a split second about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's an approach. It's not an application.
Right.
Right.
it's a wonderful tool for novices. And if you ever watch old films that took place in a newspaper office, and you'd see this big blackboard or whiteboard, that's a storyboard. They do most of them do it electronically nowadays, but it's a very effective tool to make sure everybody knows what they have to do and when they have to do it.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Secrets, things you want Daryl to know as he takes over, or communications ideas that have really been helpful to you in your chapter? Let's not all talk at once here.
No, I've got one thing to say about that. When you're responding to an email, please be sure that you have the right subject line. I can't tell you how confusing it gets, especially when you receive 100 emails a day like I do, where the subject line says something when I actually open up the message, it's a reply to a completely different message.
Good point. Anybody else? All right. Well, this is Steve Bailey. Let me thank Daryl. I think I might just come around and get in front of the camera. Here we go. I want to thank everybody for 2 days of a wildly successful, in my humble opinion, chapter leadership conference done virtually. As I told the people yesterday, some of you were on, some of you weren't. You know, we recognized early on that although this thing was scheduled in St. Louis in person for last weekend, we recognized early that there could be a problem. So we had contingency plans developed and thought we can probably do this virtually if push comes to shove. Well, push came to shove pretty quickly. And so we gave the national officers a couple of options. So we can do this. And the only thing is to decide to do it in 1 day or 2 days. And I'll take the blame for 2 days. because I thought last year that we did something similar. And I thought one day got just a little bit long in the tooth. And the other thing, if you narrow it to one day, if somebody can't, for any reason, be available that day, then you lose them. So for some people, I know most of you are hanging on here for both days, which we appreciate. Some of you could only do yesterday or today, but at least it gives you that. So when next week rolls around, I plan to send out a survey. Now, don't throw up yet. I hate long surveys. They totally work my last nerve. So I promise you, I will keep this short and sweet, and there'll be comment boxes if you want to add stuff, go for it. Otherwise, we'll make it a really easy to complete survey. I know Robin is compiling attendees. Remember, she's going to do, a matter of fact, she's sitting out there working on some right now, doing attendance, certificates of appreciation, certificates of attendance, and we're asking everybody just to drop Robin a note, robin@nma1.org. That way we know you attended. But I'll probably send the survey out to everybody because she'll have her list and I have the big list, and but we do need your feedback. Virtual meetings are the thing of the future, I have a feeling. I love the face-to-face. I know Marcello yesterday said something about wish we had more time to share best practices. That's what you miss if you don't build time into it or can't do it face-to-face. So I'm sitting, it was a lovely evening here last night in Dayton, Ohio. I'm sitting on my porch having a cup of coffee after dinner, thinking through that. And I'm like, okay, if we add 10 minutes to everybody, I'm going, well, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That would have been another hour yesterday, another 50 minutes today. We're going to take a look at it, see what we can do to streamline it for future, for the future, if we have to do them virtually in the future. Nothing is easy, but nothing is impossible. So it really doesn't matter what Sue, Steve, Daryl, and Robin think. What really matters is what you think. So your feedback would be greatly appreciated. Daryl mentioned that all these presentations, all the PowerPoint, they're already up on the website. He did that himself. It's under events and meetings. And Sue is going to put up the recordings as well. So you can pass this along to your chapter colleagues. If you can't sleep and you get up in the middle of the night and you realize, I want to hear Lynn Schneider's presentation again, not because it'll put you to sleep, but because you want to hear something nice. She's going to kill me. You can log on and listen to it again. If you want something you missed and you said, I need to hear that again, well, it's there. So we're doing everything we possibly can to make chapter leader training and to make the lessons of leading chapters available for you 24/7 in your bunny slippers. So I think we'll ask one more time if anybody has a parting shot or two. It's ever so slightly past 1:30, so we'll only do this for a couple of minutes. But I would like to let you, as the owners of the association, have the last word. Anybody?
Steve, this is Michelle. I would like to thank the staff, give a big round of applause for an amazing job you did. Thank you all for pulling this off. I know we had planned to be in St. Louis, and just like true leaders, you stepped up and said, okay, well, let's go to plan B. Let's make it happen. Let's make it work. And you did an outstanding job. Thank everybody. I want to thank the presenters. Did amazing work. Thank you so much for stepping up. Just like leaders, this is an opportunity, and a lot of you didn't shy away. Say, hey, step up, and I'm go review the material, give what works for our chapter, what works for NMA, and help the new leaders that's coming on board. And also to everyone that's online. Like Steve said, you've been some been online Friday and Saturday, giving up time out of your schedule. I know you got other things to do, even if you had staying at home, but thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us and to learn what you, to learn maybe some nuggets, some golden nuggets, what can help make your position more successful and ultimately the chapter more successful. So thank you for wanting to now improve yourself, but improve your chapter. So a big, hard, warm thank you to everyone.
Cool. Thank you, Michelle. And I should add, while some of you might be unmuting yourself to say something, the little logo down in the left-hand corner of the screen, Michelle designed that. That's her theme for the year, that NMA is the key to leadership success. And they use a key in their chapter at Marietta as a part of their logo. So it just all ties in really well. And we were glad we had it and could put it on all of our slides. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. It was well done, very well organized. I liked it a lot. Marcelo from NLA.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Yes, I echo Michelle's feedback. I thought that great feedback to everyone and to the staff. And again, this is the environment that we're in provides you with the opportunity to figure out what leaders do in situations. And I think this is a great example of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that feedback. Anyone else?
Steve, this is your best conference ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Either you're easy to please or maybe we did pull this off. Thank you.
You know, I liked it being virtual after years and years of attending the face-to-face. I was really curious to see how you're going to pull it off, and it was great.
Cool. Well, and I want to thank Sue, Robin, and Daryl. I'm just kind of here. I joke that I'm just here for pictures. They have worked tirelessly to pull this off. All the registration pieces, all the presentations had to be put together, sent out to the presenters. We got their feedback. We made changes. Some cases we made changes right before the presentation went up, actually. Robin's kept track of everybody. You know, registrations came in, we were at 20, we were at 30, and we're like, okay, 40, I hope we hit 50. Yikes, we hit 100, or actually above, which we did not anticipate. So thanks to all of you, the NMA staff just stepped up, and I could not be more thankful. It's a nice way to kind of go out the door, knowing that we can do anything we set our minds to. Anybody else?
Steve, on behalf of Chapter 581 in Bismarck, North Dakota, we just want to say happy retirement and thank you for serving as a great leader.
Well, thank you, Heather. And, you know, during some of this pandemic stuff, Sanford Health has gotten some really good publicity in terms of being a leader in the healthcare industry in the Midwest. And, you know, I'll be sharing with my successor that, and I know you guys are helping us already, you're working it, that getting more hospital chapters through Sanford Health would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So my ears perked up the first time I saw Sanford Health on the national news. So I want to congratulate you and your team for everything you're doing to be a leader in the industry.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Well, the sun is out in Dayton, Ohio, but not for long. There's a storm a-coming. So I'm going to bring this to a close. So Sue, Robin, Daryl, and I can get on before we get wet, and wish you a great weekend. Be on the lookout for the survey, and mostly, thank you. Our chapters are in good hands with people like you who will give a Friday and a Saturday to learn. So great job, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you next week with a survey. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks
Bye.
again.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.